People are going to lose their minds. This is a moment in history unlike anything humanity's gone through. It's a very different world for humans to come.
Take a step back and see the broad picture, which is the way all these technologies are interlinked.
Because this is all about exponentiality, and humans can't think in exponential terms.
How consequential do you want to say machine intelligence is? It's almost certainly as consequential as writing. How long did writing take to disseminate through the human population? Hundreds, thousands of years. And we're dealing with it now on a scale of months.
But in this kind of world, you're compounding 100% growth every year, and the numbers become astronomical.
AI is going to spot patterns in the world that were just completely invisible to us.
Even if you think that the AI and the robots are your demise, you might as well bloody invest in them and make some money out of it. If not, you're just going to be angry man shaking your fists at the clouds.
It's going to shred people's heads, basically, and shred their conception of what human beings are and how we relate to one another and how we relate to the technologies around us. Because I think we're going to get to the point where we feel even more acutely than we're starting to now, that we're amid another way of seeing the world around us.
Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited about the week ahead because everything is going to be on a topic that's dear to my heart, which I think is the biggest opportunity set we've ever been given. But it comes with a lot of complexity as well. And that's something I refer to as the exponential age. And the exponential age, just to remind you where the idea came from, originally, I'd started to look at the Fed balance sheet as a denominator and realized that there was debasement of currency going on. And I started looking at everything versus the Fed balance sheet, and I found two assets that miraculously outperformed it, which was crypto and technology stocks. And I'm a macro guy. I hated investing in technology because technology was always for the stupid optimists, the people who never believed in mean reversion, and it was always expensive, and it just didn't suit me as a macro person. Most macro people are in the same boat. And then I started to understand, well, why is it doing this? And as I did the work on crypto, I started understanding Metcalfe's law and network effects and adoption models, and I realized that technology was going through the same thing. So I then started going through the work on technology to understand, why does it trade expensively? Why does it keep going up? Because you look at the log trend, it just keeps rising over time. The log trends of Amazon, Microsoft, the NASDAQ, Tesla, all of these things are endlessly bottom left, top right, but they're volatile when they're not on the log trend. So I want to understand that. Part of it was obviously the debasement of currency, but the other thing I started to realize was technology had been increasing in speed and also in kind of leap forward. And we were about to enter a period where we were probably going to get the fastest period of technological change humanity's ever lived through. That was the building blocks of what I then discovered were, now I'm going to read through the list because there's a lot of them, but I broke it down to different layers. One was the infrastructure layer, which was kind of data networks, compute, energy, and that's including EV and new energy and nuclear. And then on top, David Mattin, who's going to be joining me on this as well, thought that we would shuffle AI into that layer of the infrastructure layer, the base layer, the important part, which everything's built on top of. I had it in the next layer, which is the productivity layer. But I think David was very right in that. Productivity layer is like the application of these things together, plus robotics, and you get robotics, 3D printing, and autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles are nothing more than robots with AI, and in fact, most robots are just machines with AI. So AI, I did realize, was a foundational layer. Then there was the digital value layer. That was how, in this new world, this kind of world where we're getting increasingly digitized, we need digital currencies, digital payment systems, storage systems, methods of verification, everything else that blockchain does. And that was a very important foundational layer for all of this. And after that, it was like the human layer. How do we extend and understand humans better, extend their lives? And stuff like that was wearables, biotech. Because when you put massive compute with lower energy costs and AI, you're going to make massive scientific breakthroughs. And we will increase longevity, we'll solve all sorts of diseases. And these kind of things are all coming together. the Internet of Things and the metaverse itself. So when I saw all of these things, I realized that we'd gone from the phase that these were all being built over the last 10, 15, 20 years, but now they were at the age and point of adoption. And when I realized that all of these individually had Metcalfe law type models, which means they're very rapid. You have to look at them in logarithmic terms. But if you realize that all of these are actually interlinked, and if they're interlinked, then you get something which is Metcalfe's law squared, which is Reed's law. I actually asked ChatGPT-4 if there's any example of Reed's law actually that's happened in technology, and it doesn't come back that there is one. It's happened in biology, but not in technology. So all of these things are about to accelerate. I first wrote the article, I think it was in like April 2021, and even I've been shocked by the speed of which AI came onto this world. We'd seen crypto, and that was the fastest adoption of any technology we'd ever seen, and AI dwarfed that. The speed of which it happened was extraordinary. So I've been writing about this in Global Macro Investors since April 2021, and I think it was of January that I asked David to help me. So David, how are you, my friend?
Hello, Raoul. Very well. How are you?
Great. Yeah, I mean, you've been down this rabbit hole on this journey with me as like sending postcards from the exponential age. Well, they're actually quite long articles and super interesting. What impact did it have to you when you saw this framework? Because you're in the technology space. You've been around it much longer.
Yeah,
but I think it seems to tie it together, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think, it's easy to see the individual elements. It's when you take a step back and see the broad picture, which is the way all these technologies are interlinked. Robotics, simulations, AI, virtual worlds, space technology. And you see the interactions they're going to have with one another and how that is going to accelerate what is already an acceleration, if I can put it that way. That's when you have your oh fuck moment, essentially, and you realize we're about to live through a wave of change that is historic. I just can't see how that's not the case. And you can look back to other times in history when essentially you saw the death of an old world and the birth of a new world, and how exciting that is, how exhilarating it is, the opportunities that are latent in it. But let's be frank as well, the difficulties, the pain that can be latent in it. All of this is heading our way, and it's a tsunami, and it's not going to play out across hundreds of years like some of these shifts, like that axial age shift, around the time of Christ, is going to play out in decades. And it's very, very difficult to understand, but we have to do the work of trying to understand it.
Humans, because this is all about exponentiality, and humans can't think in exponential terms. You can't understand when things double every year, what that actually means. It's like the power of compounding. People kind of understand that when, Uncle Warren Buffett talks about the power of compounding. You're thinking, I'm going to compound my 8% returns. But in this kind of world, you're compounding 100% growth every year, and the numbers become astronomical. Like we saw the speed of AI getting to 100 million people in, 3 months?
Yeah, right. I mean, and we've set up an infrastructure now, essentially a connected world, the internet, where the innovations can just smash into humanity in months. And we simply have never lived in that world before. When comparable technologies were invented, how long did it take them to disseminate through the human population? I mean, how consequential do you want to say machine intelligence is? It's almost certainly as consequential as writing. How long did writing take to disseminate through the human population? Hundreds, thousands of years. And we're dealing with it now on a scale of months, years. We can't comprehend that. I guess it's because we don't encounter exponentials in nature. We encounter linear change in nature.
You do see in viruses, stuff like that. There's some things.
That's true. Yeah, but they take us unawares, don't they? I mean, and they radically, it's a good comparison, and they just radically destabilize societies. And now we're building something that's going to do that. So for people like us who love to observe and try to make sense and build the big puzzle, it is a thrilling time to be alive. It's kind of a scary time too, because we're heading into a future that just feels so uncertain and so new, that the work of understanding it is so crucial.
Hey, sorry to interrupt again. It's Raoul here from Real Vision. I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, get the notifications. We have so many incredible conversations with so many amazing people. It will really help you in your financial journey and your journey to understand just what the hell's going on in this world. Anyway, click subscribe, get the notifications, and enjoy. People are going to lose their minds. We've got like the election. I've got a piece coming out on Wednesday about AI and the election. We've got the US election, which is always a heightened sensitivity because of social media has now created this beast. We're going to throw in AI, and then we're throwing in geopolitical stresses, and then we're going to throw in the existential threat to jobs and the economy and what this all means. And people just are going to grapple with this. And it's going to be, how I've always thought about this is, even if you think that the AI and the robots are your demise, you might as well bloody invest in them and make some money out of it. Because, if not, you're just going to be angry man shaking your fist at the clouds. And where does that get you?
Yeah, I mean, people, of course, all of this triggers a huge range of human emotion, and that's completely normal. And we can't change that. And people's emotions become confused, and then their thinking about it becomes confused. They think about whether or not this wave of change is all going to be positive. It's not. They think about whether they personally are going to like all the implications. They're not. And then they allow that to sort of govern in a simple way whether they want to be interested at all, or whether they want to participate at all, or even pay any attention. And those are very different things, exactly as you say. I mean, any intelligent observer is going to see things happening around them that causes perplexity, dismay, all kinds of feelings. But you need to understand this. And, you can't fight the weather. You may as well participate on some level, even if your participation is about saying, look, from my perspective, this is about insulating me from the insane wave of change that is coming. I want to build, certain guardrails around my modes of existence as they are now, right? My work as it is now, like whatever it is. But to do that, I need degrees of freedom and capacity to do it. That's a perfectly coherent position, yeah. If you're tech, if you love all this stuff and you just want to dive in and you want the chip in the brain, you're signing up for Neuralink, all of that, fantastic, great. Knock yourself for that. It's also a totally coherent position. There are all kinds of ways to face this. But if your position is, I'm going to turn away and not face it, guess what? It's not going to work. It's going to smash into you, whether you're facing it or you're turning away.
I just think also, this is a moment in history unlike anything humanity's gone through. And I know every day is a moment in history and there's always something big going on. But this is a fundamental shift to humanity. I mean, like one of the things you and I have talked about, we've not talked on camera since June, but one of the things we talked about was that AI was the infinite scaling of knowledge. I mean, we can't get our heads around what these things mean and where this is going to lead to, but we are living history. And that's why I like writing about it and documenting it in Real Vision to put our markers down as this thing unfolds. Because you kind of forget, it was like the pandemic, it all happened so fast, and then you forgot to keep a diary of it, and then you've kind of got these blurred memories. But just to anchor yourself in what the hell is going on, I think is just really important for people. So they, as you said, whether they like it or not, doesn't matter, but you can't ignore it.
Yeah, I feel the same. There's just a huge value and huge pleasure simply in documenting this. This is what it was like to live through it. This is the sound of someone trying to make sense of this insane wave of change. And I just don't think people understand how fast this is all coming. Here's one example that I saw just a couple of days ago, and this is totally mind-blowing. And it's an example that covers, robotics, simulated worlds, and AI, and brings them all together. NVIDIA have this simulation platform called Omniverse that allows the user to simulate complex, real-time physical environments. It simulates the physics in those environments. You can bring the physical world into virtual space in this simulation platform that NVIDIA are developing called Omniverse. They've just launched, a couple of days ago this is, an AI agent in Omniverse called Eureka. And what that AI agent does is autonomously writes code that teaches simulated robots how to move. And it's just written a ton of code that's taught simulated robot hands to perform incredibly complex manipulations. And it does this completely autonomously. It generates code that starts a cycle of kind of trial and error learning with the simulated robot hand. And then it iterates. So it gets feedback from the robot hand to improve the code, which improves the learning of the hand. And what you're seeing is, in a matter of days, weeks, hours, the training of robots to perform complex movements and operations in physical space that will then be able to take and translate into real robots. It's mind-blowing. We have AI just autonomously training our robots for us now in simulations. I don't understand how fast it's coming.
I wrote about a piece in GMI this month about the fact that they think they can use large language models to understand the language of whales and dolphins.
Yeah.
Scientists are producing these papers saying, yeah, we think this is applicable and it should work. And we can finally crack the code of what they're talking about and how and what their language is. I mean, that again is bonkers, where we're starting to understand the language of animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we've both been doing some pretty interesting interviews around this exponential age one. The Robert Scoble one, I loved, because he's kind of all over this. Talk me through a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, he's an incredible figure, a Silicon Valley legend. For someone like me, a real legend too, because he's been writing about technology online his whole life. In the early 2000s, when I emerged blinking into the world, out of university, Robert Scoble was online writing all about technology. So he's a real OG of the kind of technology blogger, to use an old-fashioned word, space. The interview, I mean, go and check out the interview. It's incredible. He talked a lot about humanoid robots and how fast they're coming in this piece. He's got a kind of framework around how humanoid robots kind of converge with autonomous vehicles. So you'll have autonomous vehicles delivering humanoid robots into people's homes on demand to, fold the laundry, do the washing up, load the dishwasher, all of that, then hop back into the autonomous vehicle and go to the next house. Everything as a service, and how that completely rewrites the economy. It's the next technology that utterly transforms the texture of everyday life in the way that these things did, in the way the phone did.
He's also massive into spatial compute and VR and AR and all of that Nexus. I don't know, did you ever see that? I think it was a BBC or at least a UK series called Humans.
Yes.
Because, that was brilliant, because anybody who didn't see it, it was on Netflix, maybe it's still on Netflix, but it's a series about humans living with the AI robots and how they treat them. And it kind of addresses it from every angle, from racism to fear to empathy for the robots, hatred for the robots, and the whole thing and what it does to society. I thought it was brilliant, and it feels like it's closer than we imagine as well.
It's a lot closer than it was in like 2015, 2016 when that show was playing. And yeah, I mean, we can get deeply philosophical about it, because you get, what does it do to the economy? But then you get to places around what does it do for society and for politics? Because at what point do we start to have a genuine conversation about whether machine intelligence has some form of personhood? I bet in our lifetime. It sounds crazy now.
And I argue
in our lifetime we get to that conversation.
You see, I think humans are anchoring themselves on humans and what we perceive as intelligence. I always keep going back to watch the documentary on AlphaGo, the deep mind, playing Go, and it wins the first 4 games. It loses game number 5, I think it was, against the human. There's commentators who are experts on the game, they're like, well, it's playing this move, it's playing that move. And that's like the Gary Kasparov versus the machine, Deep Blue, which was a machine learning model. It lost a game and then never lost a game ever again. And the next game, these humans are going, well, this is stupid. Why is it playing that? Nobody play this move. And it just didn't play human moves. And it was at that point, I'm like, I don't believe the bullshit narrative of stochastic parrot, because it cannot do that. It cannot suddenly learn how to play a game and play it like no human has ever done it before when it's never been taught that. Because that model of kind of predicting the next thing doesn't work that way. I think that's really interesting. The guy from Anthropic, there was an excellent interview with him on some podcast. And he's like, we've had to build an MRI machine for our AI, to try, like we do with MRI machines, try and figure out brain activity. We're trying to figure out how this bloody AI thinks. And we can't figure it out. So I just, when people talk about, when is it a person? When does it have intelligence? I'm like, I don't think we have any clue whatsoever. There was another thing that really struck me was Lex Fridman interviewing Sam Altman. And Sam stopped him at one point, stopped Lex and said, do you think we've invented AGI? We just don't know it yet. And Lex stopped, because he's an expert in AI as well. He stopped, thought about it for a while and said, I don't know.
Yeah, that is an amazing conversation. What we're going to be forced to do is disentangle all kinds of difficult concepts that are, at the moment, are extremely entangled. One of the big ones that people tend to entangle, and this goes somewhat towards your point, is consciousness and intelligence. And they think that when we say these AIs are going to become, superhumanly intelligent, like extremely, extremely intelligent, that we are already saying that they have some form of consciousness or subjective experience. We're used to being in a world where the only highly intelligent creatures around us also have subjective experience. We act as though we believe they do, and that's other people. It's very hard even just to decouple intelligence and consciousness. And then you start to talk about, well, is it a person? What does that mean? What is the concept of personhood? You will start to talk about, should it have certain rights? Things like that. This gets deeply philosophical. And it's going to shred people's heads, basically, and shred their conception of what human beings are and how we relate to one another and how we relate to the technologies around us. Because I think we're going to get to the point where we feel even more acutely than we're starting to now that we're amid another way of seeing the world around us. And this is like the whale thing. AI is going to spot patterns in the world and see things in the world that were just completely invisible to us and feel like alien insight, but it's going to then sort of be able to translate it into something we can understand and use. And that's going to be head spinning, because it will see the world in a completely different way. And we've never had another creature or entity among us that sees the world in a different way and can sort of tell us about it. It's going to be head spinning.
We keep going down the rabbit hole of AI, but that's just part of the exponential age, because one of the other ones is compute. And you wrote an article recently about quantum computing. And, we've got an interview, I think, on Monday as well on Pro Crypto about quantum computing and what it does to cryptography with Daniel Dargin, who was also part of the narrative around compute for distributed computing power, which is all part of the same thesis. What did you find out about quantum? How far away are we from that? And what would it mean if it comes? Because I feel like quantum computing plus AI plus cheap energy equals unfathomable outcomes.
Yeah, yes, that's the too long didn't read. It is unfathomable. I've always found quantum to be a difficult space to assess, but I went because it is early and the potential implications are so head spinning, and it's obviously deeply, deeply technical. But I went down the rabbit hole exactly for that essay for GMI, And my conclusions essentially were that we're at something of an inflection point moment, and it's really interesting the companies making progress in this space. I mean, IBM are, how often do we talk about IBM? Not too often these days, but they really are leading the charge on quantum computing. And right now we're still in a place where it's about coaxing quantum bits, so-called qubits, together and massaging them in the right way so that they remain kind of coherent, they remain in a quantum state. And IBM are working with a quantum computer that is, say 1,024 qubits. And they're saying, next year that they've got a 4,000 qubit computer that they think they'll be able to kind of operate usefully. We need to get to tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of qubits operating in unison before we get to the kind of results we're talking about or we dream of.
But it's probably 20 years away?
Yeah, we're talking I think we're talking decades away here. But if we get there, like I say in the essay, we're not talking about operations that might have taken a few months, but now you can do in a few days. We're talking about operations that would have taken 80 million years for the world's fastest current supercomputer and now take a day. So number one, it just blows apart all cryptography, the security of all the world's data, the encryption of all the world's data, because that's built around the fact that currently, to break that encryption would take millions of years of compute power, but quantum will do it in seconds. But then there's just incredible implications across the board. If we can cultivate that kind of compute power, the things we can do, for example, in the life sciences and the material sciences are just amazing. And it's the life sciences and the material sciences particularly that are such exciting spaces, because obviously at a subatomic level, reality is operating in quantum ways. And quantum computing, because it runs on quantum bits that can be in more than one state at once, is very good at simulating that kind of behavior. So we'll be able to, cultivate new kinds of like small molecules, assess new kinds of proteins, develop new kinds of materials using that kind of compute power, just exponentially faster and more powerfully than we can now.
Quantum physics has been quite interesting because of these quantum computers and kind of proving that quantum physics kind of happens where two things are in the same time in different spaces. D. Smith, who I've just interviewed on the platform, got me down the rabbit hole. He said, read a book called American Cosmic, and it was about UFOs.
Yeah.
And I started to think, I've been going down some weird rabbit holes about both ghosts or those kind of other experiences and the UFOs. And I'm kind of thinking, I don't know if you've ever seen his Dark Materials, the Northern Lights trilogy. It feels that maybe a reason for that is because these are kind of the ability to see into a different quantum field, whether it's time. So people of a different time, things of a different time. I don't know. I think there's a lot.
Raoul, this is absolutely, it's true. It's absolutely fascinating. And this is one for a late night one with a cocktail or a whiskey or something like this, because the quantum account of how reality works at the deepest level is of course, we all know, utterly, utterly strange. And you have to ask yourself if the current picture we have of ultimate reality out there is sort of adequate. It would appear there are things going on that are just realms and realms and realms beyond our current understanding. And when you start to think about sort of unexplained phenomena, and UFOs can be part of that, you have to be open-minded to the idea that essentially what I'm saying, the current scientific mainstream account of reality is not right. This is one we could get.
And this is, people are going to watch this and think they've lost their fucking minds. But honestly, these are from serious people. These are not kind of, UFO, hacks. These are serious people, serious scientists about all of this and past lives and all of this kind of stuff. And it just feels like it's connected within this quantum physics. I have no idea. But anyway, that's just an aside that something big is going on. Another thing that I'm really interested in is the nexus of, we talked a bit about robotics and AI and EV and new energy. And that to me gets me to Tesla, which is that stock everybody loves to hate. But I don't think people understand still that they've essentially trained a large language model to be like a video language model or a large video model. So they're so how all autonomous vehicles were being used was basically machine learning. So somebody was typing in stop sign equals stop, you do this, you do that, and kind of that's how it was coded. And then Elon flipped on his head. I'm sure others had done it before him, but basically flipped on his head and scale and said, we're just going to take the 8 cameras in each Tesla. There's 5 million Teslas. We're just going to ingest all of that and train AI how to drive based on how humans drive. And that's what they're doing with the world's largest supercomputer, Dojo, which is still ramping up. The amount of compute power and the amount of video processing that trains now cars to drive without essentially the machine learning element is a massive breakthrough, because that's what trains robots to operate in a human environment or a non-human environment like Mars. These are really, really big things. So a Tesla becomes a robot with intelligence, driven on non-fossil fuels, an alternative fuel source. And you take the same technology and put it in a humanoid robot, and you've got the Optimus.
Yeah.
And then the other idea is the Neuralink, which is the connector between humans and all of that technology as well.
Yeah. I mean, and I had an absolutely fascinating conversation with the thinker that I know you love as well, Fallacy Alarm, that focused on Tesla and his thesis essentially, and I think fundamentally I'm in the same place, is that the next great technological paradigm and innovation paradigm is what he calls real world AI. It's essentially harnessing machine intelligence and AI to manifest in the physical world, in the so-called world of atoms, to navigate our cars, to navigate our robots, to do all kinds of amazing things, not kind of in the cyber sphere, in the internet sphere that we've been playing in for the last 30 years or so, but finally in the real world, an incredible wave of innovation in physical reality, fueled by machine intelligence. And that Tesla is building a unique position when it comes to that platform, that real world AI platform, because exactly as you say, at the heart of everything they're doing is a supercomputer and forms of machine intelligence that just give objects the capability of autonomously coping with and navigating around and doing useful work in the real world. And that is just profound. It's much more than just a car. I mean, obviously the car dimension is huge. The robot dimension is huge, but the machine vision, the kind of the fuel that's driving all this is just that is just insane. And Elon's taking LiDAR out of the cars, just using cameras, so he could use the same machine vision AIs for the robot, which just has cameras in it. It's all coming together, you have to say.
What's also fascinating about Elon is, my thesis has been that and again, people are not going to like this or they're going to love this, but the reality is he's going to first principles to go to Mars. And so the first issue to solve is, how do you get there? And the second issue is, how do you pay for it? And the third issue is, well, how do you build anything on Mars? Because it's inhospitable. And if you break down every project he's done, they're all for that mission, and they all generate cash flow and massive amounts of cash flow. So, because you need a robot to go to Mars first to do manual labor or do whatever, because it's inhospitable to humans. The boring company, I believe, is to bore underneath Mars, and it's the same size. I've gone through this. The specs of the boring machine is the same size as the large rocket. So it looks like it's a potential payload. Now, whether it can do that yet or not, I doubt it. Then there's the self-driving cars with alternative energy source. That means it can go around on Mars because there's no oil there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It becomes very, very interesting. But the other thing Elon did in this whole process is how to make SpaceX cash flow positive, was obviously charge for rockets and become unbelievably, he controls more rockets than anybody on Earth in terms of output. But then he built Starlink. And I use Starlink a little, Cayman, and it's mind-blowing. But if you think of what he's doing, he's got all of the cars with all of the cameras, training all of the AI and all of the robots, and he's now going to own the entire fucking internet from space.
Right? Yeah.
If he ever gets where he wants to get,
is incredible.
He's going to be the most powerful man in existence if this continues.
Yes. The concentration of power and technological capability is becoming beyond belief and stupendous. And in terms of just the machine vision component, I said when I spoke to Fallacy Alarm, and I think he agrees, there's a huge play there to essentially become the Amazon Web Services of machine vision, to be the machine vision capability that fuels all kinds of objects and brands and businesses with their autonomous robots and cars kind of floating around the world. And that is just immense power if you are essentially the fuel behind all of that. And this taps into, as you said, one of my underlying frameworks for understanding the exponential age, which is that machine intelligence becomes something akin to a new form of energy. It becomes foundational, becomes a kind of infrastructure that just powers everything going on above it. It's very difficult, again, for us to conceptualize a world where intelligence is abundant, intelligence is on tap, not human intelligence, machine intelligence is abundant and on tap and just fuels everything that's going on. But that is the world we're heading to.
And the other world we're heading to is space. I talked a bit about space, and I've got coming back at the end of this week is Leon Alcali, who blew me away, because here's this serious scientist from the Jet Propulsion Labs, and he's been through the whole space program forever. And now he's a VC investing in space. I'm like, why invest in space? Surely it's, Amazon are trying to do a bunch of stuff. It's not that real. There's Elon, fine, we get that. And he's like, no. You don't understand what's going on out there. People are setting up server farms in space, so you don't have to beam down the data, and they're using crypto payments up in space, and they're going to put a 3D printing. He's like, 3D printing is so important because we can now print parts for rockets on the moon, use the dark side of the moon, which has less gravitational pull, which can push us further out into this, asteroid mining. And my jaw was to the floor, because this is not some kind of hyperbolic VC 30-year-old from Silicon Valley. This is a serious guy from Jet Propulsion Lab. So I can't wait to catch up with him to find out what the hell's been going on in space. I mean, you wrote some articles about it, but to get it from him firsthand, because he'll see it early stage what's happening.
Yeah, it was an incredible conversation with him, and I cannot wait to see part 2 of that. And again, this is another one that's crept up on people, and they haven't seen how fast it's happened, and how the exponential is taking off right now. In the year 2000, launch costs to get to space was about $64,000 a kilogram. It's now about $800 a kilogram. That's happened in 25 years, say. It was $400 million for a satellite. And these satellites were like massive dumpster trucks, $400 million, another $200 million to launch it if you were lucky, because half the launches didn't work. You can now, you now have people building a satellite for $1 million. The satellite is about the size of a loaf of bread. It weighs a few kilograms. It's just, and so the ecosystem of startups that's blossoming in that environment where launch costs, the costs of access to space is now so low. The ecosystem that's blossoming there is just incredible. You have incredible startups. Spire, they've got a ton of little satellites in space, just looking at the entire surface of the Earth constantly and selling that as a service now for people that want to track the progress of, an individual container ship or an individual small craft across the surface of the Earth. Just incredible startups playing in that space. So yeah, I can't wait to hear part 2.
Also, the other thing that's happening is, both you and I believe that over time, we will find alternative sources of energy at much lower prices. So fossil fuels, because you have to mine it, just has kind of a fixed cost element to it. And once we do, and it'll be a combination between all the things that we know, the things that we don't know, plus probably nuclear. And what's been fascinating to me is see Microsoft building, it looks like it's got permission to build nuclear fusion, whichever the small one is, the micronuclear plants to power the AI computes
Right.
and stuff like, because they know it's energy intensive. So I think they've got the license to be able to do this, which I think is just the start of the journey of that, which is something you and I have talked about as well, is like a distributed energy network. Because now you can get these nuclear things that are like boxes.
Yeah. I think, and I wrote about this, and we'll talk a lot more about it in future, I think, because it's a deep underlying relationship in the exponential age emerging between AI and energy. We're moving towards a distributed energy system based on renewables, based on solar and wind. They're intermittent. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, as the people who oppose all of this constantly say, and yes, that's true. So it's intermittent, it has to be managed, it has to be distributed and smart and interconnected. And the only thing that can manage that for us and make it all work is machine intelligence, which is extremely energy intensive. So what you are going to start to see is this symbiotic relationship emerge between our energy and machine intelligence, where AI manages the energy. More energy allows us to have more AI. More AI allows us to manage more, create more and manage more renewable energy and distribute it. And you get this flywheel effect between AI and energy. I mean, this is a simplified version. I talk a lot more about it in the essay. You get this symbiotic relationship between AI and energy that I think is fundamental to the exponential age. And I want to understand a lot more about that, be more granular about how it's going to work and what the implications are, what the implications are for investors.
And I also think the other layer we've kind of touched on is this human layer. Is what does it mean for us? We're kind of used to people wearing Apple Watches or wearing, rings that give them some biometric data, but that's going to change a lot. So we're already seeing one of the fitness apps have AI models built into it that gives you recommendations about what you should be doing and give you endless improvements, learning off your data. That's just the start of this. It not only augments human intelligence, but augments humans' management of themselves as biological creatures. Whether it's cracking biosciences that we've talked about by using huge computational power and AI, but just this wearables, the AR environments where you're now augmenting everything you see, everything you hear in that blend between reality and digital worlds. It's a very different world for humans to come.
Yeah, I mean, very, very different, almost incomprehensibly so. And, we're going to fall into, I've been banging the drum for this for years. I've been talking about what I used to call virtual companions for years. And as I think I've said to you before, 10 years ago, when I would go to a bank or I would go to, some audience that wanted to hear what I think about where we're all heading. And I would say, look, people's relationship with AI is changing. It's going to become about more than just transaction and functionality. It's going to become about higher order human needs like health and wellness. And they're going to turn to AI companions for kind of counsel and friendship and conversation. They'd look at me like I was insane. Look at what's happening now. You have a platform like Character AI created by some of the Google engineers who worked on the original paper that's fueling this generative AI wave. And Character AI is all about building your own little AI-fueled, generative AI-fueled virtual creature, virtual pet or character, and then talking to it and having fun with it and treating it as though it's your friend. And we're at the start of a massive wave of virtual companions and people falling into a relationship with these kinds of entities.
Yeah, I'm also giving a peek behind the curtain, not quite as shocking as that world of having friends of that, but I'm also working on a Raoul AI bot trained on everything, all of the content I've ever done. So you kind of get, Raoul in your pocket. You can ask me questions. It's kind of, it's weird, but that's the world we're going into. And soon it'll be voice driven, and then it can also be video driven. So you just have a call with me and have a chat. It's kind of weird, but I feel like I might as well throw myself headfirst into being at the forefront of some of this stuff because it's happening anyway. And I think it's going to be very interesting. And hopefully, whether I add value or not is a different matter, but, scaling doctors in your pocket in ways that we don't yet understand where you've got wearable devices, you've got the AI, you can talk to the doctor whenever you want and worry about this, what happened, or he wakes you up in the middle of the night and says, well, you've had sleep apnea. These things are going to change humans.
Yeah,
and just help people a lot.
Yeah,
in many different ways.
I mean, look at what Meta are doing now. They just announced this wave of AI that they're weaving through all their platforms, and part of that is a line, isn't it, of essentially virtual companions, AI fueled companions, and they've even got these they've got celebrities to kind of face them, which I think is a bit of a strange decision. It's like Paris Hilton, Snoop Dogg, but it's not really them. It's you're talking to them as a character. I mean, anyway, that's for them to figure out. But you can see clearly where this is heading, and this is just the beginning.
I've also heard that Netflix is working on this, so the programming becomes interactive. That you can play part of it because it's the AR, VR plus these kind of digital characters. So none of this then becomes like actors in a film, or it now becomes AI playing a role and you can play a role within it. So you're living now in this, you can live in a soap opera or a drama or a reality TV show. You can be in it. I mean, I know this all sounds like Black Mirror because it is. That's where this is going, right?
Charlie Brooker is some kind of dark genius in terms of extrapolating the directions of these trends and dramatizing it. There's no denying that. I mean, so Black Mirror does get name checked all the time, and I get that. It is a very interesting show for playing in this space and thinking about where these things are heading. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to, and the implications, the Raoul bot is so interesting because the implications of this for artists, for creators, for anyone who creates IP is really profound. I mean, I've written in my own newsletter about how essentially I think we're heading to a space where the creators or artists' own life is seen as just sort of the first step, almost the preface in a longer journey where they produce work that trains an AI model and deeply trains it across the course of decades, if they create for decades. And then that model can create in their own unique, particular style, essentially forever when they're gone. There's all kinds of IP implications of that. It's an entirely new way for creators and artists and actors to scale themselves. Because
it's not me on a video channel talking, you and I a video channel, it now becomes an interactive version of me. It's me to many, as opposed to, me individuals to many individuals, as opposed to broadcast, which is just, again, a whole different way around it. The other thing about this, the other person I've got to talk about all of this who's brilliant was Geordie Visser. Did you ever see my interview with Geordie?
Yeah, I did.
He's a brilliant guy. Another ex-macro guy. He runs a big fund management firm called Weiss hedge fund firm. And he's fallen deep down this rabbit hole. I was in his offices in New York recently. I mean, he's basically retooling his entire business around AI and is a great thinker on it. So we'll have a bit of fun on the macro and AI. Because, the other thing about this is it's all well and good to just think about all of these amazing things happening, the scary things happening, all of that. But, most of us want to make some money as well. And, I created that exponential age basket, which was my just a kind of dumb idiot's guide to maybe we just put a few of these things together, not very well thought out. And, that's done extremely well. It's up like 50% this year, just based on just getting those broad themes right. And I just think, there's the potential for even a stock like Tesla or any of the technology companies. I think if we're right in this thesis, these companies become larger than any companies have ever been in the past, and they're already gigantic.
Yeah. There's an incredible wave of value creation coming from this.
Yeah.
And I just think what's so special about Real Vision is that it can empower people to benefit from that, to understand it and put themselves in a place where, however they want to live and whoever they want to be and whatever their attitudes are and their feelings are about all of this. And like I say, there's huge ranges of legitimate feelings and attitudes and orientations to this. But living them out means empowering yourself and taking charge understanding, and investing, developing financial options. And that's what's so special about, what Real Vision does and the journey people can go on when they watch these incredible conversations.
Yeah, and we can't leave out crypto as part of this, because this is going to be the infrastructure layer for the entire financial industry. We're seeing it happening, in front of our eyes. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, everybody, the European Investment Bank, issuing bonds on Ethereum, using different payment systems, central bank digital currencies, stable coins, NFTs, the scale of what is happening in that space. Yes, again, it always feels like this, but when you look at it, it just does this over time as adoption happens. The opportunities and the stuff in that is big. So I think also on this week, I think I'm on Pro Crypto with Kevin Kelly, talking about the nexus between macro and crypto, which is always one of these things. I just love how all of these themes all weave together. And then we've got the macro on top, which is the driver. It's like, I'm looking at this moment in time, and the big driver for all of these trends, one of the big drivers is obviously debasement of currency, because we're dealing with an over-indebted world. And we're getting to the situation where the bond market is freaking out so much because they're trying to issue so much debt that at some point, the central banks are likely to have to reverse course. That gets a very interesting setup to 24, 25 for both technology investing and crypto investing. So I really think that the end of this year is very positive from a macro perspective for this stuff. And the next 2 years after that are all to play for. So, my whole focus is on this right now. I just think, if humanity is going to go through this, we might as well be involved. And if the humanities fucks up the macro so badly by having massive debts of this aging population, the only way, and slow growth, the only way around it is technology and productivity. And I wrote that article, Robots are the New Demographics, which is part of that. Is like, well, if you can't, GDP growth is driven by population growth, productivity growth, and debt growth. Well, we've reached the end of debt growth. Population growth, we're actually starting to shrink in most developed countries. But the moment you put in robots and AI, you've created infinite people. Yeah. So does that mean infinite GDP growth? I don't know, but maybe. Depends on the constraints. You'll have energy constraints and other stuff. And what does that do to productivity? It could change everything.
Yeah, I think it does, and Elon thinks the same. The quote that always sticks in my mind from him about the Optimus robot is, look, he thinks the Optimus robot is the even bigger play than the car. And essentially he's like, if we can get this out there at scale, I don't even know what the economy means anymore at that point, because human labor, which is such a fundamental part, obviously, of the economy, the role of it, the role of labor and the nature of labor just changes fundamentally. What does that mean for the economy? And then on top of that, for society, for people's lives, for education, the implications are just staggering. And look, I hold my hands up when 2 years ago, whatever it was, he brought a dancing man in a white spandex suit on stage and said, we're launching a humanoid robot. I said, I will take that with a heavy pinch of salt. And now look, the Optimus robot is autonomously sorting objects, by hand. So it can do that physically, and it's got the kind of cognitive intelligence wherewithal to do the sorting. It's moments away from hitting fulfillment centers, warehouses, and being useful. And look, again, I talked about the NVIDIA example. A couple of days ago, what did we see out of Amazon? News that they are trialing humanoid robots in some of their fulfillment centers, not Optimus ones. I think they're made by a company called Agility. But yeah, they're trialing humanoid robots. They have 750,000 robots in their fulfillment centers already. They employ 1.6 million people in those fulfillment centers around the world. And they're doing what all the companies always do, excuse me, which is saying, this is not going to displace any jobs. We're doing this to kind of experiment with how the robots work alongside the people, and then we'll kind of liberate the people to do more fun things. And I'm sure on some level they believe that. The implications are going to be profound, and yet exactly as you say, what can we do? We can understand it. We can build models. And however it is we want to live and whoever it is we want to be, we can make money that empowers us to do that.
I mean, I have the two sides of this. One is I've got my house in Little Cayman, which is an island of 140 people. It's the last place the robots are coming for. Although I'm on my Starlink there, but generally speaking, it's like back to nature and I can escape some of this madness, but also I'm going to throw myself into the madness by getting involved with as much of this as possible, investing in it and everything else, because I think it's what a moment to be alive is what I think of all of the time. The other thing is there's people watching this who's like, well, this stuff is too racy for me because it's so volatile. It's so hard to learn. But then there's plenty of opportunities in rare earth minerals or copper just to make electricity. There's many, many ways, or uranium, I know many people have got that bet on about nuclear power. There's many ways to play this theme that other people can feel comfortable with. And, that's part of the exploration that will happen over the course of this week. So look, I'm really excited. You've got some good conversations. I've got some good conversations. We're going to learn a shit ton of stuff. And then we'll come back on Friday, you and I, to talk through our learnings and maybe make a big announcement as well.
Yeah, cannot wait. Cannot wait for the conversations I've got in store. And I can't wait to hear yours because, you're connecting with some brilliant, brilliant people.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. All right, David, let's enjoy the week and we'll touch base at the end of it.
See you soon.
We hope you enjoyed the video. At Real Vision, we help you understand the complex world of finance, business, and the global economy with in-depth analysis from real experts. Join the revolution at realvision.com.